Hey, what's going on, me double jellyfish? It's Tracy. Thank you so much for taking a little bit of time today to hang out with me. I really appreciate it. And in today's video, I'm going to be talking about black staples that you can run in the majority or all commander decks. These are really fun videos for me. You guys seem to also really enjoy them. I have also done the other 4 parts, so if I don't mention a card there's a really good chance that I've talked about it there, but I do plan on keep going with this series. As well, I only talk about 10 cards per video just to keep the, video a little more condensed, so we're not here all day. But yeah, let's just jump into it. The first card I want to talk about is Bastion of Remembrance, and I run Bastion of Remembrance in one of my decks. I run this in my Merkwoodbats deck, and I like it. It's a very simple card. There's not really a lot to it. EDTBs, you get a 1/1, which I always really love. I always really love having a bunch of tokens for that little bit of protection to either be aggressive with or to block with. And then whenever a creature you control dies, each opponent loses 1 and you gain 1. I don't even think you need to be doing any sort of like mass creature, creatures on your side of the field or anything for Bastion of Remembrance to work, because there's going to be so many times where your creatures die in combat or there's a board wipe or something like that, and then you do have that little bit of life gain and your opponents have that life drain. I do think it's a solid option. It's a couple bucks, but it's a good option if you're looking for something like this. Next up we have is Hero's Downfall. To me, what separates Hero's Downfall from a lot of other spot removal cards is that option to destroy that Planeswalker. To be honest with you guys, I don't really find Planeswalkers unless I'm playing against like a Super Friends deck, which one of my friends, Lucas, does have a Super Friends commander deck. But I don't find Planeswalkers particularly challenging to deal with most of the time, because I've just found swinging at them is just, it's removal right there. But if you're in a play group, like a sticky situation where you do need to remove people's Planeswalkers, in particular, Hero's Downfall is a good option for you. But if you're just looking for a really good budget card that destroys things, Hero's Downfall is a good option for you. Next up, we have Butcher of Malakir. This card with Bastion of Remembrance also, it's a good little option for you. But Butcher's a good card. It's a little mana expensive. It's 7 mana for a 5/4 flyer. And then when this or another creature you control dies, each opponent sacks a creature. This, to me, is if you're doing a lot of creatures, creature recursion, anything like that. We're going to be talking about a couple of cards that recur in this list. You want your creatures to be in the graveyard for whatever reason because they have a death trigger or something like that. And then whenever they die, each opponent sacks a creature, which is so incredibly cool. What I love so much about Sacrifice is that it gets around so many things. If you're unable to target your creatures, your opponent's creatures, if they have indestructible, all those sorts of stuff, Sacrifice is a really solid option because it doesn't target, it doesn't get around, gets around a lot of sort of things. So Butcher is a good option for that. Next up we have is Vampiric Tutor. I don't think I can go one of these videos without talking about a tutor. I mean, they're great options for you in Magic. Vamp is one of the more expensive ones. We've talked about a couple of cheaper ones on here, but Vamp, I think what makes Vamp so good is that it's 1 mana and it's instant speed. So if you're needing to be really aggressive, Vampiric Tutor is a really good option for you, and every bit of your mana counts. I would definitely suggest this. You tutor for a card, you shuffle it, you put it on top, you do lose 2 life. You don't have to reveal it, which is really awesome. I would say best case scenario is you do this at the end of your opponent's turn, then you take your turn, so that way you get that perfect draw. Or if you do this during your turn, maybe you have a way to draw an extra card or something like that. You do lose life, but I honestly don't find it. I think that's a very small sacrifice to pay if you're able to get your perfect draw, basically. So next up we have is Entomb. And does anybody remember when Entomb Exhume was the big thing? I'm pretty sure Exhume's the one that puts it onto the battlefields, which we're actually going to talk about a card that does something like that in this list in a little bit. But anyways, Entomb is a great card. You tutor for a card, but instead of putting it into your hand or on top, you actually put it in your graveyards. This is great for people who care about things that are going on in your graveyard. For me, I found that even if I'm not doing a ton of graveyard recursion, I like to have just a couple of cards to do that, because I like to cast my cards more than one time, and if I'm able to do that, I really enjoy having the chance to do that. Entomb is a good option for you. It's a little bit on the pricey side, but it is very good, and it is at instant speed, which is really awesome as well. Okay, next up is a newer card This came out this year, I believe, and one of my friends, I believe, introduced me to this card called Hostile Negotiations. First off, the art of this card is awesome. I like it a lot. It gives me Baldur's Gate 3 vibes. I don't know why, but I'm really enjoying it. So, for 4 mana, you exile the top 3 cards of your library in a face-down pile, then you exile the top 3 cards in another face-down pile. Look at the cards in each pile, then turn a pile of your choice face up. This is such a weird, like, it's like so weird as I'm reading it. I'm like, this is very strange. An opponent chooses one of those piles, put that pile into your hand and the other into your graveyard, you lose 3 life. Okay. I love cards. This gives me like Fact or Fiction vibes, but in black, and Fact or Fiction is one of my favorite Magic cards of all time. Here's my thing, is if you're playing a sort of graveyard deck, it doesn't matter which pile goes into your graveyard. Like, to me, I love the fact that this does say graveyard. I found a lot of times with a lot of cards that have coming out, like, lately, is they don't give you the option to be putting them into your graveyard. So, for example, it's like, look at the top 3 cards of your library, you know, you may put one of them into your hand and then 2 back into your deck. I don't want to do something like that. I want something like that in my graveyard. I did end up picking this up for Tasigur. Tasigur does not often make tweaks, so whenever I do put new cards in there, it's a pretty big deal. And I like Hostile Negotiations. I don't think I've actually drawn this card yet, which is a little bit of a bummer, but I really, really like this card a lot. If you're a fan of Fact or Fiction, I definitely recommend looking into this option for you. You do lose 3 life, but again, inconsequential, small price to pay. For me to get 3 cards into my hand, like this card basically is like draw 3 cards, you know? And then you get to put 3 cards into your yard. I love that. Okay, we mentioned a little bit of recursion. We got to talk about Reanimate. I'm surprised it's taken me this long to talk about it. I love Reanimate. I have it in Mugus, and I have it in Tasigur, of course. Tasigur's my favorite recursion deck, so gotta do that. Again, little bit of a price to pay. You do have to pay life equal to its CMC, but I honestly do not find that it matters. You know, you Entomb your big thing, you're reanimating it. It also is creature card from a graveyard. You do not have to pick your graveyard. So if there's something way better on somebody else's graveyard, go ahead and snatch that up, and then you get to put it onto the battlefield for 1 mana. Again, the CMC... You know, one thing I will say I think Black is doing a little bit more lately is they do have a lot of life drain things, but they have those little bit of life gains. Like we talked about Bastion of Remembrance in the beginning of this video. There's definitely a lot of really solid ways for you to gain that little bit of life back if that is important to you. But yeah, I just really love a card like Reanimate. The fact that, you know, this with your Hostile Negotiations, put your big thing into the graveyard and then get it back for 1 mana is just absolutely ridiculous. So good. Next up we have is Bolas Citadel. I have seen the effects of Bolas Citadel, and I've actually never played with this card before. I actually own one. I traded for one. I traded for the promo, I think is what it is. It's a great card. I think it was my friend Brad who played with this card and just absolutely playing with all of the cards. It's basically just having an extension of your hand, which is so cool. So you can look at the top card of your library anytime. I'm a sucker for that. I love looking at the top card of my library. If I like get to know that information, I'm all for it. If I have to reveal it, I don't really care. This one you don't, which is cool, but I don't care. I love looking at the top card of my library. The fact that I get to know that information just, it's so good. You can play the top card of your library. Now, if you do cast a spell this way, you do pay life equal to its CMC rather than paying its mana cost. So you are paying life to do that, which again, as we've talked about, it, to me is a small price to pay. I think Bolas Citadel honestly works best if you are gaining life, because this card can get out of hand very, very quickly. You know, okay, I'll pay 3 life. Okay, I'll pay 4 life. Okay, I'll pay 7. Like, it just kind of topples and it just kind of adds up. But again, you know, if that's not something that's super relevant to you because you're able to get out your things faster, I think that is so cool. And it does have this other ability, which is sack 10 non-land permanents, so each opponent loses 10 life, which I just think is kind of like a funny little, like, hey, we needed to make this card a little bit better. Like, I don't know exactly why that's on there. I don't really think it needs to be on there, but it's a fun little option for you. I don't necessarily think you need to build Bolas Citadel with that little text in mind. You can if you want to, but I honestly don't think it's very relevant in the grand scheme of what this card is trying to do, which is to take cards off the top of your library. It's basically just drawing cards, and then you're just paying life equal to its CMC. So there you go. I love this card. Okay, Black Market. For the longest time, wow, this card jumped in price. Hold the phone. I got Black Market in a trade. Wow, this card is... Oh, hold on. Sometimes the TCG player prices are a little bit jank. It said it was like $12, and I was like, last I checked, it was like $3 or $4. It's $3 or $4. Okay, sometimes those prices are strange. Also, I'm so sorry if you can hear that crying cat. My office door is closed for... This is a story. Anyways, I have not picked up a Black Market for a very long time because I thought that this card existed in foil. I think it does, but I think it's ridiculously expensive. It's been printed to every single Commander product, it feels like, in the last little bit of time. Black Market is a ridiculous Magic card. I put this in my Mugus deck. I got it in a trade a while back, and I've never looked back since. This card says, when a creature dies, any creature, it is tokens, anything, dies. Put a charge counter on this. At the beginning of your pre-combat main phase, you get to add a black for each charge counter on it. The first time I played with this card, I have this in my Mugus deck. The first time I played this card, I swear I had 22, 23 counters in my Black Market. And I was just like, all right, add 20, 22, 23. I love a card like this with a card with X, any of those X spells. So something like Debt to the Deathless is really, really good. There's another card that I'm Torment of Hailfire. I think we talked about that in a past video. So incredibly good, because then you're like, okay, Torment of Hailfire it's 2 for the cost. So it's Torment of Hailfire for 20. That's pretty ridiculous. Hard for a lot of people to come back from a 20 Torment of Hellfire or something like that. But even if you're not playing with those X spells, every single time a creature does, every single time it does this. I think if you're playing a mono black deck, if you're playing a 2-color deck, anything, put Black Market in there. You will not regret it. It is a great card. People want to get it off the table. I'm surprised I had it that long in that game. It was just ridiculous, guys. I was just, all the time. It's a great card. Okay, and the last card is Mirkwood Bats. As soon as Mirkwood Bats came to be, I knew that this card was going to be a staple for a lot of people, because if you're playing tokens, not even necessarily just creature tokens, I mean, you could play this with creature tokens too, but guys with treasure tokens running around having an absolute field day, Mirkwood Bats is your friend. It's a 4-mana 2/3 flyer. When you create or sacrifice, each opponent loses 1. I feel like to make this card more balanced, they should have just done one or the other, but it's whenever you create your treasure token, each opponent loses a life. When you sack that treasure token, each opponent loses a life. The amount of times I've seen this card just do so much work, it's absolutely insane. With the amount of tokens that are running around right now, Mirkwood Bats is a really solid option, and then it's also a 2/3 flyer, which is so good. So, I love Mirkwood Bats. Paul loves this card. And I gotta check with my friend Roberto to see if he also has this card, because he has a lot of treasures, and he has a Prosper deck, which is really fun. And there you go. So, guys, that is everything for talking about 10 additional black staples that you can run in Commander. I really hope that you guys enjoyed this video. If you did, go ahead and give it a thumbs up, subscribe to our channel if you're not already, and I'll catch y'all in the next one.